After plenty of discussion, debate and disagreement, Formula One's new rules for 2021 have finally been unveiled. A lot will change both on and off the track, and Formula One's hopes are that the new formula will bring more exciting racing both in the immediate and in the distant future. The biggest changes for 2021 are in the technical regulations, where the cars will look very different. As part of a huge push to increase the number of exciting races, the aero formula has undergone plenty of development, but there's still plenty more changes under the skin. To get you prepared, here's the 10 key things you need to know ahead of 2021. Number 1. The return of ground effect cars. Ground effects have not been permitted in Formula 1 since 1982, but the calls for their reintroduction have become rather loud in recent years. With Formula 1 looking to reduce the current reliance on wings for downforce, which have been blamed for the dirty air that makes close quarters racing difficult in modern racing, the idea of ground effects coming back has been a lot more attractive to F1's rule makers. And now they're back. By creating a very pronounced entry at the front of the floor, the air moves through 2 Venturi tunnels. As the air flows under the car, it's squeezed through the point closest to the ground, developing an extreme low pressure area, creating a large amount of suction underneath. This means that the floor is relied on more for downforce and reduces the wake produced by various bodywork components. Unlike the old school ground effects, the car won't have any sliding skirts and instead has a range of fins underneath to minimise any disturbance. To make sure each team uses the floor as it should, a standard T-tray will be developed to attach to the front of the floor. Number 2. Brand new bodywork. There's a lot of change to the amount of bodywork for the next breed of F1 cars. In 2021, the massively complex barge boards will be completely removed. In their place comes a new breed of wheel bodywork, which intends to minimise the effects of the wake produced by the wheels as they rotate. Wheel covers return, and the front wheels now have a deflector over the top to assist with that wake management. The front wing has also been redefined and can now be made up of a maximum of 4 elements overall. Most crucially, the end plates now look very different and are produced with a smooth blend from the front wing elements to a single piece end plate, upturned like an aeroplane's wing. The nose also attaches directly to the wing, much like it used to before the middle of the 1990s. The rear wing has also been redesigned too and can almost be described as end plateless. Instead, it loops around into a beam wing mounting, aiming to slash the strength of the vortices produced at the rear of the car, which is blamed for cars being unable to follow each other. For the time being, DRS remains, but this can be revisited if the new cars produce the desired on-track product. Numbers look good so far, and Formula 1 and the FIA have noticed that when one car length behind another competitor, the following car now has around 86% of its usual downforce, compared to the 55% it currently experiences. If that translates to the circuit, that's very, very good for close racing. Although there's been plenty of debate whether the new cars mean every car is too similar, Formula 1 showed a selection of different rules adaptations, so there is indeed the opportunity for variation. Number 3. Engine regulations get minor tweaks. In reality, the current turbo hybrid formula wasn't going to change much for 2021, and although there were discussions to remove the MGUH, it was decided that they would remain on the car. But to reduce the overall costs, the power units are allowed to be a little bit heavier, and now must be made of commercially available materials, so no exotic or exclusive materials are allowed in its construction. Engine supply customers now must have the option of equal spec equipment, and that includes software and fuels. Teams of course can opt out of this if they have commercial agreements elsewhere or other preferences in place, but manufacturers must at least offer up their engine maps and fuels. Fuel pumps are now standardised, meaning that any fuel trickery can be monitored more easily. That also includes a number of ancillary components such as pipework. Fuel must now include 20% renewables, for example biofuels, which will rise in future seasons. Number 4. New parts classifications. Because the new rules are somewhat prescriptive to produce the desired on-track product, new classifications have been devised for each part. Listed parts include parts a team must design itself, for example, most of the aero parts. while standard parts are parts that everybody must use, which now includes rear wheels and pit stop equipment. Transferable parts are parts that may be bought and sold between teams, for example gearboxes and clutch mechanisms, so that means that Haas can continue to buy a range of parts from Ferrari as it currently does. There are, however, two new classifications. Prescribed parts are parts that everybody must design to the letter. These include parts of the wheel aerodynamics, wheel hubs, and of course the aforementioned front floor T-tray. Open source parts are parts that may be designed by a collective group of teams and can be made available for all. That includes the DRS mechanism, brakes for the next 2 seasons, and steering wheels. Number 5. Sporting regulation changes. The changes to the sporting regs that involve the technical side include the more tightly regulated CFD and wind tunnel running, now called Aero Testing Restrictions or ATR. These include 400 maximum restricted wind tunnel runs for 2021, to drop to 320 for following years. This also furthers the CFD restrictions, meaning that teams have a lot less to work with in this area throughout each season. The dyno testing allowance for power units will also be reduced to minimise costs. There are also new penalties for brake pads and discs, which are now restricted to 1 new set per round. First time offenders of that get a 3-place grid penalty, and 2 places will be docked for each subsequent brakes offence. Number 6. 3-day weekends. With Formula 1's plan to increase the number of races to 25 for 2021, they have cut Thursdays from the current schedule to ease the burden. That means that scrutineering is moved to a Friday morning, and that's going to change things quite a bit. Teams are only allowed to race with what is sent to scrutineering on Friday. Teams can still run development parts in practice, but they can't then decide to race with those parts that weekend. It has to have gone through scrutineering first. So, teams might have to take a gamble before the weekend on a new part, rather than wait and see if the data looks good. Number 7. New safety features. The current problem in Formula 1 is the amount of on-track debris, which can often interrupt races or cause damage if it's not disposed of swiftly. One of the key new safety features for 2021 is that select parts will be covered in a rubber membrane to stop them from shattering so easily. This means that on-track debris should be reduced, while the intention is also to stop front wings from detaching from cars. Some of the components at the rear of the car will also be tethered to keep them attached in the event of an accident. The nose will be longer to improve the energy absorption, while the side impact structures will also be strengthened, and cockpits will be made larger to help taller drivers. The caveat of this is that weight will increase from the current 743 kilograms to 768. Number 8. Cost cap. From 2021, all Formula 1 teams will be subject to a $175 million cost cap. Although there are a few exceptions, such as marketing and driver salaries, the cost cap is mainly focused on the production, development and running of each car. Any breaches of the cost cap will be subject to a serious penalty, ranging from fines and reprimands in minor cases to suspension or exclusion from the championship in the worst cases. This means that research and development costs will have to drop in order to meet the new cost cap, creating a knock-on effect on the technical rules. For 2020, there's going to be a dry run to check all of the financial processes work, but teams won't be subject to any penalties. Number 9. Gearbox and suspension changes. To help limit the R&D costs, gearboxes will be frozen from 2021 to the end of 2025. In that time, there can only be one upgrade to the gearbox specification. Suspension regulations now only permit springs and dampers, meaning that using solely torsion bars will no longer be allowed. The heave springs, or inerters as they're also known, will also be banned to simplify the suspension systems. Suspension uprights must now be solely included within the wheel assembly, meaning no external mounting points may be permitted. Brake discs and pads will be made larger to accommodate the new 18-inch wheels, while tyre blankets will eventually be phased out, but not until 2023. Until then, these will become standardised. Number 10. Rules for the CAD age. Each team will have to submit its CAD development of its cars, and the FIA can monitor whether this fits within defined reference bases or reference volumes. During scrutineering, the cars can be scanned and measured against the CAD files, meaning that any rules transgressions can be immediately detected. At a glance, it should be easy to determine whether a car is legal or not. Those are the key 2021 rules changes. Let us know in the comments what you think and what you change for 2021.